Hello everybody, welcome to ProAviation Studios. Amongst the many types of video content that we are planning on producing and featuring here on this channel, one of them is interviewing scenery and aircraft developers for the various flight simulation platforms which are currently available. We will primarily be focusing on Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, X-Plane 11 and Prepare 3D. In this video, we will be interviewing one of the co-founders of the newly established scenery development company, Terrainy Studios, who happens to also be a real ATPL-rated pilot, and we will also be taking a look at their newly released airport scenery, Samos International Airport, which is currently available for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So, my first question to you is, how long did it take you to develop Samos Airport?
So hello everybody, and we basically started with Samos, I think it was back in August 2020, and we finished everything just basically a few weeks before the release, which was December 4th. So we basically finished by the end of November, and the testing, followed. That took quite a while, a bit longer than expected, but we really went, as deep as we could with the detail, and we tried to basically keep everything as real as it gets, and of course with attention to the detail, but also trying to keep the performance at optimum levels, because as we know, it's a new simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it still needs some tweaking here and there. So the last thing we wanted is to make a super heavy scenery, so the average simmer could not use. So yes, that's basically how long it took us to develop the airport.
I can for sure attest to that. I've been in flight simulation for 15 years, and I'm also a senior developer myself, so I can for sure say the level of detail that has been put into the airport is highly visible. My next question for you is, will you be bringing Samos Airport to X-Plane 11 and Prepare 3D?
So that's a question. I have a short answer for that, and for now my answer would be no for now. Now for the future, that could be something that we'll probably discuss, but we already know some very, very good developers bringing Samos into X-Plane as well, and I think shouldn't be really a need for us to bring it over. And I got to say that we also love the new simulator. This engine allows us to do crazy things that we couldn't even imagine back, like in X-Plane 11 or P3D. I know they're all very, very active platforms still, but regarding the technical aspect, and only the technical aspect of building a scenery, I'd say that Microsoft Flight Simulator is a whole new level. It's very, very optimized in terms of the level of detail that you can go, and for example 3D lighting, how much of it you add, and the detail of the buildings, the object itself, and the up to 8K textures, for example. So I'd say the new engine is really the future regarding the technical aspect of scenery developing. But as for the other platforms, of course we love them, of course we fly on all of them, and that's something that we're going to have to see in the future, but for now, no, we're not bringing it over to X-Plane or P3D.
During the development process of Samos Airport, what was the most difficult part for you to develop?
Okay, so basically we announced Samos, and we started working on Samos as soon as Microsoft Flight Simulator released, and it's a new platform, and the SDK as well is a new thing, so not many people really had the experience to work on it and work with it. And as you know, the SDK needs a lot of tweaking and more further development. There are a lot of things missing yet still, and when we started there were even more things missing. So we really had to dig into it and do a lot of research about it, and it was a learning process, but eventually we got where we wanted to, and I think it can only be better from now on, because it's getting developed day by day, the SDK. One example is basically the ditches, the water drains that are in the airport area, and those are basically, I think they're like approximately 2 meters inside the ground, and they're very distinct feature of the airport because you can really see it from almost every angle, and that's one of the limitations we had at the airport, that the SDK didn't allow us to basically terraform the area with the accuracy required to fill those in and make them look like the actual thing. So what we did instead is we have the 3D object with an optical illusion that basically looks like a 3D, drain, and that's of course something to be updated as soon as we get an update from the SDK, and we don't have the limitation on that. Now, regarding the scenery built by itself and not the SDK, it was quite challenging because our philosophy is basically using a lot of detail and going, very detailed in a lot of the areas, and most of the stuff we actually do is things that most of the people will not even notice when they use the product, when they fly on the scenery. But those who will notice, I think they're gonna be pretty, surprised to see the detail there. We have added a lot of things that we couldn't really showcase in any of our videos or the pictures because there are a lot of them. A few examples. I mean, the one that we also showed on the website is basically the tower interior. We had pictures from the real tower interior, and we tried to go, as detailed as possible. You can see we have filed flight plans on the desk and everything. And for example, one of those flight plans is an actual flight plan of an Olympic Air flight to Athens, which is barely noticeable if you look at it, from a close distance. Nobody will ever notice that, for example, but we know it's there and we're happy about that. And other things like, for example, in Pythagorean village, we have the statue of Pythagoras with all the scriptings on it, and we have the archaeological museum again with all the scriptings on the museum and everything. The churches, the castle. We basically try to replicate the thing, as good as possible. As you probably know, we already have it on the feature list. We've included most of the biggest villages around, and it's Pythagorean village. We have some of Hora, we have Ireon, which is also a visual aid flyover. And we use custom buildings for all of them, hand placed one by one, and we made sure it matches the actual thing. It looks like the actual thing, the night lighting and everything. So that was the biggest challenge for us. I think the biggest challenge was to not only do something and place a few houses that look like it's Greece or whatever, but trying to pass the feeling that, oh, I'm in a Greek island, I'm in Samos, and I think that was the biggest challenge, but it's the most rewarding thing as well, because if I look at it and I look at the real airport or the real island, as you say, is, for me as a Greek, I think it's very close, and I'm happy.
Samos Airport is infamous for its challenging approach. Since you're a real pilot who has flown many times in and out of Samos Airport, can you talk to us a little bit about the approach?
So Samos, yes, definitely has a very challenging approach. For those that don't know, the airport is classified as at the category Charlie, which means that only a captain can perform a landing on a commercial jet or whatever. The approach itself is challenging because of a lot of things. Mainly is the position of the airport, the location of the airport, that creates all the other problems, because as you know, the airport is located in this valley. This valley is surrounded by high terrain, which is a very big hazard for the airplanes coming in. And also the orientation of the runways 09er and 27 are facing directly east and west, which means, because most of the times there's a wind from the north, most of the times you're going to have a crosswind on each direction. So I start first about the terrain issue. So basically the terrain, when we're talking about runway 09er, which is the most famous one, I'd say, when you're coming in to land, you probably know the pattern, and there is also a briefing pack included in our scenery folder, so you can read a little bit more about it. But basically you really have to be accurate on your speed and your altitude, because you don't want to come too low or too fast. And also you have to be very, very precise on your bank angle and when to initiate your turn towards the runway. And that can get even more difficult when you have crosswind, which is trying to push you off the center line. So it's a special category of airports. We have basically lower minimums just for runway 09er to be stable at 400 feet instead of 500. And that's because basically by 500 feet you should be in the turn still, so you're not going to be stable to land. That's the number one problem. It's the terrain and the steep turn you have to do on the final, to join the final. The other problem is that, again, runway 09, there is a sort of a canyon on the north side, which basically accelerates the air from the north and hits you as a gust most of the times on short final, which can basically make you, unstable, can make you overshoot or undershoot the runway, and all sorts of problems. So that's also one of the very, very big issues. So basically every time that the wind is more than 20-25 knots from the north, we can expect some serious gusts on short final there. Of course, it depends on the day, but most of the times it'll be like that. Now, regarding runway 27, it's a runway that is not used so much. Like 90% of the time is runway 09 in use. Runway 27 is used mainly when there is wind from the south. Now, the problem with runway 27 is that basically the Turkish border is really, really close. That's number one. And number two is basically, again, when you're on final to land, if it's a very, very windy day, you might encounter some winds here, basically near Pythagorio. That's more noticeable if you're taking off from runway 09er, which means you're gonna pass over Pythagorio and make a right turn. That's another hazard because, again, with the northern winds, you can encounter winds here upon takeoff. And that's because of some rotor waves, like mini rotor waves that happen behind the mountains. So yes, really nothing is simple and straightforward with Samos. The approach, both of them are pretty tricky. Runway 27 is not too bad, but again, it's not the easiest. It's not a straight to land. So yeah, the approach of 09er is the most challenging thing, I'd say. Runway 09er in general is the most challenging thing because even on the takeoff you might encounter wind shear. And the problem for the bigger jets and everybody that wants to operate all year round is basically that there is only a circle to land procedure. You cannot go over the mountain, or there's no ILS or anything else. So you basically have to follow VOR, DME, or an NDB procedure for a circle to land, which means that if the weather is too bad, then you're probably not going to land.
And for all of the viewers that are watching this video, there will be a follow-up video here on the ProAviation Studios YouTube channel, where we'll go into explicit detail and explain all of the approach and departure procedures that are used at Samos Airport, and all of Samos Airport operations in general. So do make sure to check that video out when it comes out here on the ProAviation Studios YouTube channel. You're a certified pilot that has flown many general aviation aircraft. What do you think of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? What do you like about it? What you don't like about it? And what do you think can be improved?
Well, so yes, I am a real pilot. I've been flying for a few years now, and I'm actually flying a commercial airplane right now for a Greek company. So basically, Flight Simulator 2020, I've been flying on it since the day of the release, and I can say it's been improved massively in those few months. Definitely it's going to need more improvement. If we're not talking about the SDK, right, we're just talking about the flying, like the average stuff that the a simmer would do, then I'd say it has potential. It has potential because the system, the flight model system it uses is not like P3D. It's more advanced, more sophisticated. So I'd say it has a lot of future on it. But let's not forget that the planes we have available right now and that most people fly are the default ones. So if we do a small comparison between the default plane of MSFS and the default plane of, let's say, P3D, then we can definitely see a huge improvement. So that for me is a sign that as soon as the big developers step in and start doing some crazy stuff with the airliners or whatever they release, I think it's gonna be amazing. Now regarding the flight model itself, I've tried a few planes. I've tried the default ones, of course, and I've bought some of the recently released airplanes, mostly general aviation, of course. And I can say, it needs improvement. There are some of the things that I don't like. Mainly the flight controls is one of them. So I don't know. It's just personally, of course, but I feel something is off a bit on the control tuning and everything. Of course, that's the thing that I always say to when I'm discussing with other simmers, is that you will never get the proper feeling of the aircraft unless you have the actual yoke of the aircraft, the artificial feel unit of the aircraft, or anything like in a full flight simulator, right? So my biggest issue right here is flight controls. I think they need a bit tweaking. But as far as the flight model goes, I think I'm expecting a lot of things by the developers, the big names.
Yeah, the pairware developers, everybody's expecting big things from them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
On your website, I see that you have Ikaria Airport that is currently in development, and the Vans RV8 aircraft. When can we expect those to be finished and released?
Mm-hmm. So basically, Ikaria was one of the first projects we started, and that was, basically we started working on it for X-Plane 11 because MSFS was not a thing even back then. So we have basically reached a very, very, very good level of Ikaria. So it's not very far away from completion, and we're also, of course, considering the idea of porting it over to MSFS as well. The thing is that we already know of some other companies that are probably going to release Ikaria in a bundle pack for MSFS. So if they do it, maybe there is no need for us to do that. So maybe we just stick to X-Plane with Ikaria and only X-Plane. But yeah, that's something we have basically paused a bit for now, just because of the focusing that we're doing is a bit more, it was Samos firstly, because it's a bigger airport, needs a bit more attention. But I can tell you that the project will at some point will be released. We're still basically not sure if it's going to be only for X-Plane 11 or it's going to come over to MSFS as well.
What about the Vans RV8 aircraft?
Vans RV8, the Vans actually is a really, really interesting project, and we started the project after Ikaria, and it's not paused or anything. We're working on it, but we're working a bit more silently. We have found a few owners of the actual RV8 actually that are helping us with pictures, and they're willing to test the flight model when the time comes, because I've flown a few aircraft but not the RV8, so I can't really have an opinion on that. But there are a lot of people willing to help on this. The 3D model itself is on a very, very advanced stage. We are actually almost done with the 3D model. We're just doing animations. And basically what we're trying to achieve with this aircraft, because it's not a very sophisticated aircraft, doesn't have like a ton of systems or anything, but we're trying to keep it simple. We're trying to make sure that we simulate everything we can possibly simulate. Like, for example, we're just trying to make an aircraft that feels and flies like the real thing. The sounds, the clicks from the buttons, the movement of the controls, everything feels and sounds and handles like the real thing. That's our goal here. That's why we're saying it's going to be a study level aircraft, and it's going to take a while, that's for sure, because as you know, creating an aircraft for any simulator is a very big task. It's not something simple, and definitely the last thing we would like to do right now is rush something just to release it. And this is completely not our philosophy. So yeah, it's gonna take a while, but it will be released.
Awesome. You said that Ikaria Airport is on pause. Does that mean you're working on maybe another airport?
Well, yes, we are working on another airport, a new airport, and we've been working a few weeks right now. I can tell you only that it's going to be really beautiful. It's on a very beautiful location. The scenery itself is breathtaking, and we're trying to go the extra mile with this one because it has an amazing interior, I can tell you that, and it's going to be a very nice airport in general. More updates, of course, will be released through our Facebook page, and we're expecting to show you some previews, some pictures soon, very soon, because we're already at a very advanced stage, I'd say. We're hoping to have the airport released by the beginning of 2021.
And that concludes my interview with Terrainy Studios. As you could see, their Samos Airport and the detail that has been put into it, I can easily see Terrainy Studios as being one of the bigger scenery developers in the future. Their Samos Airport is currently available on the Sim Market and on the Aerosoft store. If you found this video useful, consider liking it, and if you haven't subscribed, then consider subscribing. Until next time, take care.